out. So if we have the next round of speakers come up, our next area is ag upgrades. And this is such a dominant land use, so I'm really glad to have some folks that submitted and are going to be presenting. We have Georgie Cartanza from University of Delaware, who's going to be talking about some changes made to the poultry industry. Tyler Monteith, talking about soil health in Delaware. We also have Tim Rosen from Shore Rivers. He's going to be talking about some new work with conservation drainage to achieve water quality goals and economic development. And then we also have Erica Kuntz, who's going to be talking about water quality trends with agricultural BMPs. So we'll get started with Georgie here.
So good morning. My name is Georgie Cartanza. I am with the University of Delaware as a poultry extension agent. So I work all up and down the state. The main things I do, I'm not an expert in water quality by any means or nutrients. The main things I do is I work with poultry farmers to try to encourage them to be the best neighbors, the best managers of their facilities, and do the best job they can so that they can be profitable and do the things they need to do in their lives. And be very mindful of the environment at the same time. So I'm going to share with you, you may say, well, what does that have to do with the watershed? But there's been many things over the past 30 years we've done that really have dramatically improved the environment for the chickens, the welfare of the chickens, but also to the benefit of the external environment and to water quality. So I will start to share some of those things with you. Okay. So, like I said, in the past 30 years, we have seen tremendous changes. And for the average consumer, and for you guys who maybe live locally, you may have no idea all the technologies, all the things that have been done, that farmers have adopted those technologies to improve the environment and as well as the conditions for the chickens. So, if you want to change it. Okay. All right. So I'm a chicken farmer, okay, and sometimes we feel a little bit like this because we're kind of getting hit on all sides, right? We've had a lot of development here. We've had a lot of things go on. We've had disease challenges that we have to contend with. It is a commodity, like most agriculture. We have ups and we have downs. We have good prices. We have not so good prices. So we're all, we have challenges. So I actually did this presentation to a group of poultry farmers about embracing change and all the change we've embraced. So I hope you're not offended by this picture. But sometimes as chicken farmers, this is how we feel because we do feel like we're getting it at all angles. So I'm going to start with one of the biggest innovations, and this took place back in the late 80s, was the transition from open water troughs to nipple drinkers. Now you might say, well, what's the big deal about that? Well, the big deal is the litter quality improved dramatically. The life of the bird improved dramatically because we had less disease challenges because you didn't have this open drinking system. So going to this closed system was an improvement in litter quality, but it also improved mortality on farms. So a dramatic improvement, 5 to 10%. So if you don't have as much mortality occurring on a farm, that means that's less birds that have to be composted. That's less birds that have to be put in land applied as compost. We've seen a transition from curtain-sided houses to a more modern house that has these big tunnel fans. That transition really has resulted in we can grow birds more comfortably, more efficiently. We've adopted these technologies to be able to accomplish that. If you were to go back in time 25 years ago, when it was 95 degrees out, it was 95 degrees in the chicken house with the curtains down. But today we can create an environment in that chicken house that's going to feel 25 degrees cooler than whatever the outside temperature is for the house. The results of that are the birds are more comfortable. They're going to continue to live and grow at a normal rate. And they're much less likely to get heat stressed, which results in a less chance of mortality. So cumulatively, those things have had a good impact on the environment. This is just that example of when you look at summer ventilation, when we used to hang fans in the center, you drop the curtains, and like I say, if it was at 95 outside, it was 95 inside. I've had people tell me, you guys are factory farming. And I asked the lady one time, I said, well, why do you think that? And she says, it's because you have all those big fans on into the chicken house. And so I proceeded to explain that evolution in the poultry industry of those fans is not about factory farming. It's really about creating an environment to keep the birds comfortable. And so if you care about animal welfare, and a lot of times if you care about the environment, you may also be very conscientious of animal welfare, this has been a dramatic improvement. Farmers are also, and I look at this from a holistic standpoint, right? One of our biggest costs outside of the mortgage payment on a poultry farm is the electric. And so we're very conscientious of electric. So most farmers, if you were to go back 25 years ago, were using incandescent light bulbs. They were using 40 and 60 watts per bulb. To they have gone through different evolutions of fluorescent to cold cathode to now most farms have LED light bulbs. So rather than using 40 or 60 watts per light bulb, we're using 5. So it's very conscientious, and ultimately that all plays back into the big picture to the benefit of the environment. We've had changes in heating, and you say, well, what's the big deal about that? Well, that heating, those changes in heating over time have made the use of propane, which is our primary source of heat, has made us more efficient in the utilization of that heat. It's also created a better environment for the chickens because we've gone from radiant style brooder to the far left to space heaters to radiant tube heaters, which actually heat the litter, which helps keep the floor drier. If the floor is drier, the same benefit that the drinkers did for us, if we keep the litter drier, it's a better product when we do go out to land apply it. It creates a better environment for the chickens. The biggest game changer in this industry, and probably the number one reason why you've seen the change in how the sizes of farms, other than economies of scale, is the environmental controller. If you were to go back 25 years ago, I started in this business. My first job out of college was working for Purdue, and every piece of equipment in that house had a thermostat. And so when we start chickens out, we start them out at 90 degrees. By the time they leave, it's going to be about 67, 68 degrees. And if you had 20 pieces of equipment in that house, you'd have 20 of these little thermostats that you'd have to adjust because we want to keep it as consistent and uniform for those chickens as we can because it's all about comfort for them. And so the transition to environmental controllers allowed one individual to take care of much more capacity. Okay, so a full-time job 25 years ago in the chicken business was 80,000 chickens. Today it might be 160 to 200,000 chickens. So when you see that change in farm size, technology is really, and the adoption of technologies is what's made it possible for farmers to do more with less. So, and that's been a big game changer. I built my farm about 13 years ago. I wouldn't even consider having a chicken farm until they had the ability to have that environmental controller. I can actually call my chicken houses up from my smartphone, and I can see what the temperature is at different locations. And you say, well, what does that play into the environment? Well, the better I can keep the environment in that house for those chickens, the better they're going to do. The less feed they eat, the less they poop. The less they poop, the less nutrients we have to put on the field. So, again, it's all a big circle, and it all comes together in that way. One of the biggest changes I've seen, and as a poultry farmer, one of the things in terms of conservation practices is the introduction of heavy use pads, and that is right here. So some research was done that the biggest place where nutrients got into groundwater on poultry farms was where when the forklift goes in and out with the cages to catch the chickens, you're going to have some rutting occur. If it rains, and as you go in and out of that poultry house, you're going to have some manure that gets on the tires of the forklift. And so what they found is that the greatest point of infiltration was at that area in that entrance and exit out of the poultry house. So probably about 13, 14 years ago, this became a practice on Delmarva that started to really has taken off. Many farms now have these heavy use pads. Typically they're 40 by 40 foot, depending on what funding you get for them and to help pay for them. But what this does is as soon as those birds leave, I can scrape that pad off and there's no nutrients that get into the road material that's there. When we clean out, I can keep most of the majority of that material on that pad. And as we decide to take it to the manure storage building, which would be the next thing that we've done on a lot of farms, is that we have a place to store this manure so that it's undercover, out of rain, out of areas where it can cause issues, until they can actually take it to the field. Now, we've really started managing manure here on Delmarva that we try to optimize the amount that we have to handle it, right? So the optimum time used to be we'd always clean out in the fall because you got the greatest benefit from new litter for ammonia control and management going into your winter months. But we really have kind of transitioned to we do a lot more clean outs in the spring so that when that litter leaves that house, it gets handled once and they go directly to the field with it. So it can be spread, incorporated, and again, hopefully that's a better way of managing it to limit the handling and just the overall impact. But we have these buildings to store that manure, and you can see even on the manure storage buildings, we also have those pads to help prevent that infiltration of litter into the soil. The other thing we've done is we've done a tremendous amount with vegetative tree buffers. And so this buffer, this is actually a picture of my farm. This buffer was planted 5 years ago, okay, in seedlings. And you can see just how much it's grown in such a short period of time. We've planted over 75,000 trees through the tree buffer program. DPI has been a part of that. It helps make that happen. And so this has been critically important, and it serves a couple purposes. Number one, it's aesthetically pleasing to neighbors, okay? So people smell with their eyes sometimes, and if you don't see it, maybe you don't smell it. But this helps create that buffer. Again, it's aesthetically pleasing, but it also acts as a windbreak, so that's going to help from an energy standpoint. And it's also going to help in terms of catching particulates that may be coming out of those fans. They act as a natural air scrubber to capture that. There are other things that we're doing as well, and that's adding warm season grasses like miscanthus grass or switchgrass. And we can plant these about 10 feet, if you double the diameter of whatever the fan is, you can plant these grasses in front of those fans, and they also help to capture any dust and particulates that may be coming out and help mitigate some of that. So these are some of the other things that are happening. And so there's been about 25,000 of those planted here in Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. There's also been a pretty big interest in trying to create pollinator plots on poultry farms, increasing the beauty, making it more aesthetically pleasing, but then also the benefit is increasing pollinators here. And so farmers have been interested in that. There's been a number of acres that have been planted. There's an increase in growers wanting to do that, and I know it's something that I'm really wanting to do on my own farm. Again, aesthetically pleasing, it saves you from having to mow as much area, and helpful to the environment. So I'm going to make a little bit of a transition. One of the things that we have when we look at nutrients on Delmarva is we certainly have the poultry manure, which we put in manure storage buildings, and we try to follow the proper recommendations in terms of nutrient management plans. Since the late 1990s, early 2000s, every farm has a nutrient management plan to make sure that whatever nutrients they're generating is being applied and handled properly. There was also the introduction of phytase into feed, so that helps make less phosphorus available to go into the soil, but also makes the bird use the phosphorus in the feed better. So when you look at that, our next step in that is, if we're not talking about the poultry manure itself, is what are we doing with the mortality, right? Traditionally, we're going to have about a 5% mortality in growing a flock of chickens. That would be typical. And so traditionally here on Delmarva, we have composted those chickens, okay? And so we went from bin composters to channel composters, and so this would be channel composting. And basically what you do is you take a layer of manure, you take a layer of chickens, you take some carbon material like pine shavings or straw, then you layer it with more manure, and so on. And over a period of 14 days, those birds are going to break down, you'll turn the pile, and you shouldn't know that you ever had any chickens there, okay? And this is a science, but it's also an art, okay? And as farms have gotten bigger, it's gotten a little more challenging to make this work right. So there have been new technologies to help us do this even better. And one of those technologies is now farm freezers, okay? And so this is one technology that farmers are starting to adopt here on Delmarva. That actually what happens is when you have a bird die, you actually will put them in this mortality freezer, and then they will actually be taken to go to a rendering plant. So that takes that nutrients out of the nutrient stream altogether. So this is one of the things that is being adopted here on Delmarva. I'm not sure what percentage of folks are doing this. If they already have a composter and they've been funded for that, it may be difficult to get funding for this. And the cost of this all depends upon your farm size, as far as what you're going to need as far as capacity. So this is a good option because, again, it takes them out of the nutrient stream. This is a very neighbor-friendly practice because it's going to reduce smell, it's going to reduce flies, it's going to be a practice of, an improvement upon our traditional way of doing it. But traditional composting, if managed properly, does work perfectly fine. This is something that's relatively new to this area. It's something they've done a lot down in Arkansas and more in the southern states, is the idea of Invessel composting. And basically the idea of Invessel composting is you're going to put the birds in this unit. You're going to add a carbon source. You're not going to use manure. You actually reduce the volume of material relative to traditional composting by about 80%. I didn't believe that at first, but I've actually seen it now that is the case. And so this is the material that will come out the end of the the Invessel composter, and you really never know that there was any chickens present there. That can be land applied. It's pretty low in nutrient value. The only phosphorus you're going to find in that is what was ever left in the gut of the bird at the time of when they passed away. So again, new technologies coming out there for us to try to improve. And really, the bottom line is I think when we know better, we try to do better, and we're always striving for that idea of continuous improvement. So for many of you, and again, this is a little bit off a little sideline, is you may have no idea how much equipment's in that poultry house to keep those birds comfortable and keep it at the optimum. But every one of those things there, whether it be fans, heaters, is all about keeping the optimum situation for the birds to create that comfort level. And in 2004, we started building houses bigger. And a lot of people say, I've seen you guys are building all these houses. You're growing more chickens than you used to. And we're not. What's happened over time is that some houses are going out of production, and bigger houses were actually more efficient to build. And so if you look at the cost of a controller, that environmental controller, whether the house is 20,000 square feet or it's 39,000 square feet, the cost of the controller is the same. And so it's like in any other business, is that if you spread that cost over more square footage, the cost becomes less. And so that's really what has kind of driven that change in size of houses. If you look at the carbon index of chicken versus other types of protein, and I encourage you to eat any kind of protein you choose to, but when you look at that, a chicken actually has a lesser environmental impact than pigs or beef, and mainly because of the feed conversion ratio. And basically what that is, it's how much food it takes to transition that, to turn it into a pound of meat. The only other animal more efficient than a chicken at taking food and turning it into body weight is a fish. So we are growing something here on Delmarva that is extremely efficient in taking feed and turning it into body weight, which ultimately, when you look at the carbon index, and that's taking into consideration, how many times does a tractor have to go across the field to create that food? The main reason for that is just the efficiency of that bird being able to do that. When you look at all the technologies that we've implemented here on Delmarva, and we probably are more advanced here than in a lot of other areas of the country in nutrient management and the way we manage mortalities. In Georgia, they still bury their dead chickens in the ground. So because of our close proximity to the Chesapeake Bay and these water areas, we grow chickens here probably better than they do anywhere else in the U.S. In terms of how we're managing our nutrients and birds and so on. So we've done a lot of things that have improved bird health, that have improved bird welfare, that have improved bird quality. We've improved in their efficiencies, which ultimately pay back in terms of the impact we have on the environment. And then we have done a lot of things, heavy use pads, nutrient management plans, the way we manage litter. All those things have tried to have a positive impact on the environment. So, for some of you, I don't usually get to talk to a group like this. I usually I may talk to kids or chicken farmers. I talk to my own people. But just to kind of give you guys an idea is that, and I appreciate the openness of this group to working with the poultry industry, is that in Delaware, agriculture is a $1 billion business. And so it's the biggest business in Delaware. And 70% of that is poultry. And you might say, well, why here, right? But if you look at the population of the U.S., 1/3 of the U.S. population lives within 8 hours of here. And if you're creating a fresh product, if you're growing a fresh product, being in close proximity to that end user is the benefit. And for Delmarva farmers who grow corn and soybeans, they get more money for their corn and soybeans because of how close they are to the end user. There's no product more local than chicken, no matter whose name is on it, whether it's Tyson or it's Purdue, because we hatch the chickens here. We grow the chickens here. We feed the chickens food that's grown here. We process them here, and we sell them here. So just think about that, when you see the chickens riding down the road in the truck, and you say, I don't like seeing the chickens on the truck. We don't grow them in those trucks, okay? They're actually allowed to go anywhere they want to in the chicken house. That's just the point of taking it from one point to another. And if you don't like the smell sometimes, I understand that. But again, it has a tremendous contribution to our community and to our economy. So the reason why I find this so important to share when I have this opportunity is I got to go to the Netherlands, and I talked to a chicken farmer over there who had told me, I said, if you knew today what you knew 30 years ago today, what would you do? And he said, I would have told my story. He says, because there's so much misinformation and so much propaganda out there that we got legislated and mandated to do things that weren't based off science, that weren't based off of anything based in, like I say, scientific proof, but just because somebody thought and felt that that was the better thing to do. And again, I'm not here to say that in the poultry industry, if we can do better, we strive to do better. But just to give you an idea, I'm not going to read all that to you, but to me, the bottom line in this whole thing is that there's about 1,300 growers like myself that grow chickens. There's about 20,000 people employed by the poultry companies, but for every one job that's actually employed by the poultry company, it creates 7 jobs in the community. And when we talk about the importance of jobs and being able to make things happen and pay for the things we want, that's critically important. And those jobs are doctors and lawyers and accountants and the person working at Walmart and Wawa. So just think about that when you think about we all have to work together. We all have to, we all live in a community together, and it's important that we all can make it work together. So, and just to give you guys an idea, you may have absolutely no idea. This is my own version of Chicken Paradise here. It doesn't snow very often, but anybody want to take a guess at, I have 4 houses on my farm, okay, and they're big houses. That farm can feed 780,000 families of rotisserie chicken for a night for a year. And so I just want you to think about that, is that we actually generated about almost 10% of U.S. poultry here on Delmarva. So it is critically important. So we grow food for the world. Our chickens go to about 181 countries all over the world. They're raised humanely, efficiently, environmentally consciously, and we do truly care about it. So, and I think you'll see with hopefully some of the things I've shared with you that over the past 30 years, we have adapted and we've changed and we've learned and we've improved. And so, and hopefully we'll continue to have that opportunity to grow and not just say grow, but be able to be sustainable here on Delmarva. And working with groups like yourself and being able to do vegetative buffers and good practices, that's what's going to help keep us sustainable. So, thank you.
So does anyone have any questions for our ag group? Yeah.
For Georgie. First of all, thanks for sharing your story, and I think that there has been a lot that poultry has done. I was a little concerned about miscanthus as a planting because it's highly invasive. Are they taking measures to make sure that it doesn't spread away from the poultry houses, because that could be a real bad actor in the natural environment?
I don't know, Holly, do you know much? We've been putting it
Not done
around
yet.
poultry houses.
Oh, she has, I'm sorry.
For the most part, I wouldn't say that we're doing anything in particular other than, for the most part, poultry houses have quite a bit of area around them between, like they'll have, that where they'll plant that, and then they're going to have a grass area in between them and other areas. So, I know that it will spread, but for the most part, we haven't seen it overtake an area.
But the farmers are aware of that potential?
The people who are planting it are aware that
Okay.
it can expand, and it does get cut down each year, and then it comes back. So,
Okay. And the other question I had was about the composting. Because if you remember the data for Fishing Bay, the water quality there is abominable in terms of the Nanticoke River watershed as a whole. And it looks as though the main contributor to that is valley proteins up on the Chickamaucomico, I think, or the transquaking. And their discharges from that plant are super high in nutrients. So I just want to make sure that you understand that because composting is moved to these freezers and it's a more neighbor-friendly practice as a result, which I can certainly see, the implications downstream of that are not so neighbor-friendly. Valley Protein sends its rendering this material that is called a DAF. It's a poultry DAF. It's basically a fluidized effluent. It's used as a soil amendment. They send it out to farmers and they spread it on their fields, and it smells about 1,000 times worse than poultry manure. And it's generating a lot of problems in Wicomico County right now. So the question about composting, I mean, I personally would favor something that didn't use all the energy that those freezers use, and rather those sealed units that you showed at the end seemed to me to be a much better solution. And then applying that to the ground where it takes longer to get into the waterways and is hopefully taken up more by the crops. I'm sorry, it's more a comment than a question, but.
I appreciate that. And I was not aware of that, so I appreciate that. And truly, the Invessel composting, that it's kind of composting evolved, right? From a biosecurity standpoint, for the health of the birds, it's a drastic improvement, and that's what the freezers are perceived to be as well. But I appreciate that because, like I said, I was not aware of that. So thank you.